Welcome to Industry Insights, Trends, Threats, and Opportunities for Investors. It is my pleasure to formally introduce you to today's guest, Kevin Kim. And Kevin Kim, who we just heard from a little bit, he leads Geraci's LLP's corporate and securities practice. His expertise lies in fund formation, private placements, real estate syndications, crowdfunding offerings, and other securities offering for private lenders, real estate developers, and investors. So whether you're an investor or a broker or anyone in the real estate community right now, Kevin serves his clients as a pragmatic advisor focusing on real world solutions. He is also a nationally recognized expert in mortgage fund formation. He's the lead instructor for the AAPL's Certified Fund Manager course, which trains fund managers on fund management and securities laws. But that's not it. He is a dynamo. He is also the host of the podcast, The Lender Lounge with Kevin Kim. And during this podcast, he interviews industry leaders, friends, and colleagues in the private lending space to learn what makes them tick, what works, what doesn't work. And he shares that with everybody. He is so well spoken. He is brilliant. We are very thrilled to have you, Kevin. And he's going to be here to talk us through these important topics today. So welcome. Taking the mic with our guest today is our very own Bill Tessar. Bill, as you may know, is our president and CEO here at Civic. He has over 30 years of mortgage industry experience, and he previously founded and served as president of 3 different mortgage companies, resulting in residential funding volume exceeding $35 billion. Since joining Civic 2017, he has taken Civic to surpass some major milestones. And I know we always say that, but the milestones keep growing and changing and shifting and going higher and higher than we ever thought they could. The most recent ones, Civic has funded over 13,000 loans. We have funded over $5.6 billion in lifetime volume, surpassing $1.3 billion so far this year in 2021. That may not seem like a lot in the conventional world, but when you look at the private money space, that is phenomenal. Bill is a Glassdoor top CEO, Housing Wire Vanguard Award recipient, and a leading voice in the lending industry, not just private lending. And today he's going to share not only his expert industry insights, but he's going to tap into the knowledge of our special guest, Kevin Kim. So without any further ado, I'd like to kick things off formally by welcoming President and CEO Bill Tessar.
Thank you, Gina. So, hey, coming out of the malaise of COVID, there's lots of current and pending legislation you and I were talking about. What I wanted to address this morning, really narrowing down the items we think could have the greatest impact on our space. And I think the big elephant in the room is Reg D. So briefly, Kevin, jump into what Reg D is, how it potentially impacts investors on this call, and then we could Q&A through that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, Regulation D is the securities exemption that a lot of people use to raise money, whether they're in real estate or they're private equity or they're just a startup business, right? It's an exemption that's highly used. You know, the SEC put out a report that from 2009 to 2015, over $11 trillion was raised using Regulation D. Now, what's currently being threatened is the ability for Regulation D offerings to raise capital from IRA investors. And this has been brought up in the recent Build Back Better Act or budget reconciliation proposal from Congress. And for those of you who aren't paying attention to the Congress and what they're doing right now is you've probably heard of the infrastructure package and you've probably heard of the budget package, and they're trying to pass both of them. Well, this is the $3.5 trillion budget package, which has to do with all the different tax raises and, things to, increase the capital gains rate, increase the income tax for certain brackets. Those things are all, I can talk, for days about them, but I would reveal my politics. The issue that we're talking about here at Geraci is specifically has to do with the 2 code sections within the proposal that are designed to essentially restrict the activity of IRA investors. And this is incredibly impactful because IRA investors are one of the key types of high net worth investors that invest in our space, the private lending industry. But on the real estate side, it is probably the most popular means of investing in real estate. And so it has a broad swath across the industry and impacts everybody. Now, the key thing that's going on here is that one section says that IRA investors will no longer be able to invest in privately offered securities that are offered only to people based off of either their net worth or certain types of education or certification. The only regulation that comes to mind when it comes to that language is Regulation D. So when we heard about this, we started, mobilizing. My partner Nima is our legislative activist in the office, and him and I'm a securities attorney. So we started mobilizing. We connected with AAPL, the American Association of Private Lenders, our local trade association, the California Mortgage Association, and I'll be going to the Arizona Private Lenders Association next week, and to get everyone to mobilize and support this opposition to this bill. Because if you think about it, this entire bill was designed to, number one, raise tax revenue, right? Well, this thing doesn't raise tax revenue at all. All it does is it prohibits people who've worked hard, that created a retirement account, and it prohibits them from investing. And who does it serve? It serves Wall Street, right? The money is they're going to be forced to invest in things that they can't, and that's not offered through a Regulation D. They're going to have to invest in public offerings, correlated offerings that are meant for the public. And so I think that this is very dangerous. I think it's also very short-sighted, and we really support the IRA custodians that are lifeblood of our industry, both on the real estate and lending side. So we're really actively opposing this legislation. But what's scarier about this legislation is there's a component to the bill that also says, if you currently have an IRA and you're invested in any of these types of securities, by 2023, you have to divest your investments. What does that mean? To liquidate and reallocate something that's you're eligible to invest in. And where is that capital going to go? Likely to correlated and marketable securities on Wall Street. And so this is important because of a lot of your listeners are investing actively in real estate themselves. And if you're actively investing in real estate, you probably have an IRA or two invested as an LP or in a property directly. This would prohibit you altogether, not only from investing in real estate syndications, other funds, doing startups. It's completely counterproductive, and frankly, seems to be a little bit about going after this tiny subset of billionaires that got caught using their Roth IRAs to have large retirement accounts, extremely large retirement accounts. This is a good. I always say, like, good intentioned, bad result kind of legislation, and we are here at Geraci are actively opposing it. I know the American Association of Private Lenders is actively supporting us in doing so. So for your listeners, if you're interested in supporting our opposition to this legislation, please go on to our website, GeraciLawFirm.com. You'll see a banner there. It's the Save Reg D. Click on that, and they'll give you all the paperwork, letters, and information that you need to know to contact your congressman and oppose this legislation.
So, Kevin, are you taking the position to modify the language to peel away that part, or is it an entire? Yeah. Okay.
No, we're not opposing the bill in its entirety, because at the end of the day, there's political practicalities that come with this, right? Tax increases. Nima said it best: elections have consequences. Democrats have power. They're going to raise taxes. It is what it is. We actually, that's bad for the industry as well. But we're not tax legislators. We're not tax advocates. This component, we want to remove it in its entirety. And why we think it's so dangerous is because they kind of snuck it in, right? It has nothing to do with increasing taxes. It has nothing to do with paying for infrastructure. It doesn't produce any income. It just prohibits people from investing with their IRAs in privately offered. So our goal is to raise awareness, the Congress people, to say, hey, this impacts your constituents in a big way, and it probably impacts you. You should be aware of it, because it's a sleeper section. No one knows about it. There hasn't been much press about it either. And so, while we're not a major media institution, we're trying very hard to get it out there. So to get as much eyes on this and notify their Congress people that, hey, this was snuck in, and this is not a non-starter for any person who's trying to achieve the American dream, right? We've always been told since we were young, save your dollars, park it away for rainy day, put it into a retirement account. That's what we have 401ks for. This is part of that. And so
is there a timing element to this? Like we need to have a position by X date?
Sure. Yeah. So the timing, luckily enough, the plan by the Democrats was to try to package this with $1.5 trillion infrastructure package. Didn't pass muster. They didn't want to use budget reconciliation, and so they're kind of in a crossroads right now. My understanding is they're negotiating with the opposition within the party, and so we have some time. But the thing with this is that we may have defeated the proposal as it stands because of internal in party difference of opinion, but we haven't defeated the fact that this is going to come back, right, in some shape or form. Right now, word on the hill is that Senator Manchin and President Biden are negotiating what terms they're willing to accept. It's likely Sinema will follow suit, meaning that the Democrats have the votes in the Senate. So what will happen likely is that they're going to negotiate the big ticket items. What we're worried about is this is just going to be kind of kept along for the ride because no one's paying attention, and that we need to have these Congress people pay attention because this is bad for their people. This is bad for them, and this doesn't achieve any result. This is just essentially, something to penal intent. The intention was to penalize these ultra wealthy billionaires from using Roth IRAs, but it has broad-reaching ramifications, to a large populace that could amount to upwards of $5 to $6 trillion being prohibited to invest in private investments, including in real estate. And essentially flow that into Wall Street, which I frankly don't want my clients to do.
Okay, let's for a second shift to opportunity zones just for a moment.
Yeah, sure.
Super hot out here for a while. Share with us a little bit about the current status and what you see happening around the corner.
Yeah, opportunity zones. I mean, for those of you who are active real estate developers, I'm sure you took advantage of it. Or you thought about taking advantage of the program. It fizzled out in the sense that it had a very specific timeline, and there were tax discounts to your capital gains.
Let me interrupt you. Tell everyone what an opportunity zone is first.
Oh, sure. To give you a little bit of a high-level explanation, in 2017, as part of the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, the Trump administration created a program in which capital gains could be deferred if they were invested in businesses or in real estate that were located in an opportunity zone. Unfortunately, with any government action, it wasn't executed very thoughtfully, and so what happened was a lot of counties rushed to create their quote unquote opportunity zones, and these had to do with census tract data based off of income and population density and a few other things. Basically, parts of the county that needed economic investment. And so what it did was it created a program where if you had capital gains as an investor, you could invest in an opportunity zone business or real estate project. And if the project was eligible, meaning that it was in the zone and it met other requirements, you as the investor would be able to defer your capital gains until 2025 and also get a discount if you invested early enough. And on top of that, if you hold the investment for 10 years, up to 10 years, the increase in your adjusted basis. So for example, if you invested in a property, it started at $100,000, by the end of the 10-year hold, it was worth $1 million. That additional increase in gain is not going to be taxable if you hold it for 10 years. This program on its face is very, very attractive as an alternative to 1031. It was very attractive for developers who were trying to build and inject life into distressed areas in their local communities. And so it's a very, very powerful program. I think the Biden administration acknowledges it. There has been no discussion about gutting the program. But unfortunately, from an investor's perspective, the availability of the discount on the tax side is no longer there. You're able to defer your gains until 25 still, but you're not going to get the discount that you normally would because that timeline has passed. However, the 10-year deferment is still available. From a trend standpoint, we've definitely seen a significant shift away from these large, hotel development funds or golf course development funds we saw at the outset of opportunity zones, late 17, early 18. And we started seeing a shift into smaller development projects, typically ground up multifamily or conversions, because On the real estate side, the requirement is that you have to double the basis, right? So the adjusted basis. You can use the land, but a lot of folks exclude the land value. So from a real estate developer standpoint, it's been very attractive for smaller projects that are absolutely located in a zone. And in parts of California, parts of Arizona, parts of Texas, they were well done. Other parts of the country, they weren't well done. So we've seen pockets of the country really boom thanks to the Opportunity Zone program. And other parts of the country, not so much because it wasn't planned properly. The city of Los Angeles famously forgot to include Wilshire Boulevard. So there is a lot of kind of problems with the program, but still at its core, from a real estate investment standpoint, if you are a developer and you are doing, for example, the best thing is like ground up construction, but if you're doing like a heavy conversion and you can double the basis, this is still a very attractive means for your investors to jump in, especially if they have capital gains coming out of Wall Street, or they're not eligible 1031. The downside of this is that this thing is designed to sunset in 2025, along with everything else in the Tax Cut and Jobs Act. But as you know, you and I know, Bill, sunsets mean very little to Congress with their trends to use legislation in omnibus bills, and they tend to kind of kick the can. So there's a lot of speculation that the ozone program is going to be just kicked down the road and extended, much like the 85 program. And we'll see how that plays out in 25. But until then, if you have cap gains and you're not eligible 1031, this is a great alternative. If you're a real estate developer, it's still very attractive. But I would recommend that you really have, number one, really solid economics. It has to look good on its face without the tax deductions. Every cap gain investor I've met who's in zones tell me that this is kind of a cherry on top for them. This isn't a driver of their decision-making process.
Wow.
It has to pencil. It has to be a very solid project for them to jump into. And the fact that it's got a capital gain deduction or extension, it's an added benefit for them because they can find other solutions if they wanted to.
So Kevin,
it's not like it's a life money.
Hottest topic in our space right now is the CDC eviction moratorium. Like everywhere you go, big talk about it. I think some people have tried to compare it to the financial collapse of 2008, and we're going to have this gigantic tsunami of foreclosures and get ready for it, and it's going to tank the real estate market. We could talk a little bit about what your view is of that and what you're seeing, and I'll share a little bit about what we're seeing here at Civic and then upstairs with our former parent company. But why don't you start with it, Kevin?
Yeah, I mean, my view on the CDC, specifically the CDC moratorium, was always a head scratcher. And I used to work for the federal government back in during my law school days when I was a young attorney. And what was fascinating is the CDC has no authority when it comes to regulating real estate. Right? There's no administrative authority when it comes to that. It's meant for disease control and epidemics and pandemics. And I get it. There's a connection between COVID and this issue, but it was strange to me that the federal government had other resources to use to encourage moratoriums or use state government to do it. And California had its own eviction foreclosure moratorium. But I think the nice part was, there was an end to it. And I think that as we move forward, I don't think we're going to be able to see much any continue. We've had a full year of this kind of I would say government protection of tenants and property owners, and I think that it has to come to an end sometime. The government can't continue to do this, and I think when President Biden tried to extend it, thankfully SCOTUS did block it and said no to it and said this is not reasonable. But California had its own version of it. Frankly, I think, like I said, with the bill from Congress, the Build Back Better Act, I think a lot of it has to do with well-intentioned, right? We're trying to protect people who may lose their homes because they lost their jobs during COVID, but the execution was very poor because, the idea is that you can't have a broad swathing form of prohibition. There are landlords of all sizes, right? And the majority of them are small companies and small businesses and mom and pop operations like my family. And so I think this is, it lacks in that type of subtlety and that kind of thoughtfulness, which is pretty typical for government action. But at the end of the day, thankfully SCOTUS did kind of shoot it down. I'm looking forward to seeing, some more thoughtful legislation on the issue, because there are consumers that need protection as well, right? I'm not saying that consumers don't need help, right? The individuals don't need help. But the fact of the matter is that, what does it have to do with, businesses that transact with businesses, right? What does that have to do with people who are lending to LLCs? So there are a lot of kind of nuances here that are oftentimes overlooked, is my point.
Yeah, it was interesting. What we saw at Civic is some of our very biggest investors that had over 400 or 500 properties, and that was their main business line, got crushed.
Yeah.
Cash flow overnight ended, and there really was no liquid reserves big enough to take care of that type of a financial tragedy. And so some of those guys really got themselves in a jam. I think what I saw and what I did personally on with any rentals is I reached out to the people that were in the house to make sure they were okay. Like, right, take a human approach to it and help any way I could before we were going to get into a legal jam over whatever the law said or didn't say. And I think for most of those people that reached out and treated one another as humans, I don't think they really had as big a problem. But I think the bigger question, Kevin, is what happens now? So my truth is, I don't think you're going to see a tsunami of foreclosures. I think home price appreciation will save most of the people that got themselves caught up in this moratorium. We've had 14 to 20% across the nation for the last 18 to 24 months. If you do quick math, that takes care of an awful lot of mortgage payments. So I don't actually think we're going to see anything like we saw during the financial crisis, which was really a credit crisis, wasn't what we've experienced now. And I've used the term big nothing because I actually don't see this hitting our space quite the way that some of the analysts have predicted on Wall Street. I actually think that HPA will solve a lot, and people will be able to sell themselves out of the problem that they're in. Whereas back in 08, they were 120, 130% LTV. They had no chance, and stay in the property as long as I can till I can, save enough money to get another place. I think it's a big difference.
And you also had a lot of protections given. A lot of real estate investors who own rental properties are also in government-sponsored loans. They're in portfolio loans that are negotiated and helped out on. You have massive HPA. That is just going to continue to help them at a low rate, right? The massive low rates are also going to be are going to continue to be a very helpful thing. The cost of your mortgage is, comparatively speaking, is not that bad. I do think, though, what's concerning is you may see a little bit of aggressiveness by some of the larger multifamily holding companies out of desire to reposition the properties. We've heard of that concern, and then also what always kind of keeps me awake on these issues is the reports on inflation and the cost of the dollar and what will we be facing from a rate increase anytime soon. Because like I said, low rates have been very helpful. Low rates combined with home price appreciation, it's a recipe for strong power and strength from an investor standpoint. But if those rates go up, it is a concerning issue. Thankfully, we're not seeing that right now within the foreseeable future. I don't know about what you see, Bill. What do you think? Anything?
I think you're right. The low rates have solved a lot of problems. I watched the 10-year, like I watched the weather, and it's sitting right around 162. What that means for everybody on the call is that long-term interest rates have risen quite a bit over the last 60 days. There's really only one place for it to go. It's up. It's not down. They've enjoyed the lowest historic interest rates in the history of lending over the last 3 years. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people in lending made a tremendous amount of money. Many companies went public. I think there is a day of reckoning with that. That being said, Kevin, we're not going from 2.5% and 3% to 5%, but we are going to stair step our way up. And so, like, if you've ever thought about positioning yourself with some long-term holds, I think don't think that this is kind of a dead cat bounce where the rates go up and then they come back down in stair step. I think they're going to elevator their way up. And if you're on the fence, you should definitely be locking long-term conventional right now. No question about it.
100%. Get in while the getting's good is what I've always told our clients. And take advantage of the opportunities presented, because they will go up. You're right. I think quarter point increase is typically the method the Fed is going to take, and that'll impact mortgage rates. But yeah, I think this is the time to do it.
And then you think about it, like it's coffee talk around here, but you could get $1 million loan for 2.5%, 10-year interest only. That's like $2,100 a month for $1 million loan. In my entire career, I've never heard of such a thing, but you can get that and you could lock that in for 10 years. That's a lot of buying power. People are looking at their homes a lot differently today. They're educating their kids in their homes. They're working out of their homes. They're taking care of their older moms and dads or grandmas and grandpas out of their homes. Like home sweet home has a different meaning today post-COVID than it did before COVID ever hit us. And I think that's also leading to the shortage of or the demand and supply of homes. I think we're down 5.2 million homes in terms of what the demand and supply is. So no one's selling as quickly as they are. Prices are going up, and there is going to be a reflection point, but I think that's going to be a few years from now. I'm still very bullish on real estate.
I have a question for you, Bill. What do you think about this? I saw a stat yesterday when I was reading. The news was 1 in 7 residential real estate properties is now owned by a financial institution.
I know. Right? I forgot where I read. I read the same thing. It blew me away.
And that's kind of scary in that sense. Like, well, is that overinflating? Is that causing significant, supply and demand issues and elevating, values when they exit? Will that cause a I don't think it'll cause a massive downswing in values, but I think it'll impact supply and demand for sure.
So, a lot of these iBuyers, we're going off on a tangent, but it's worth just putting a bow on this conversation. You have a lot of the big iBuyers that are transacting very quick. Most of these firms are professional tech companies. Yep. They're not professional real estate firms. And so they buy. You saw Zillow just come out and they said, fourth quarter, we're done buying. We have too much. We got to kind of think about our portfolio and how that's going to trade and reposition. I think more to come on that. They're not the only ones, right? A couple of the other big competitors are pointing their fingers that way, but you're going to see more pause because it just eventually a loan or house has to trade. I don't like it personally. I don't like the big firms holding thousands of properties, whereas people on this Zoom call today can't really transact in some of those areas. And some of these firms are buying up entire neighborhoods, like
cities even. I mean, there's a small city in Texas that got purchased, right? So I mean, and I think it's important to note, it takes a lot of buying power out of the investor community, but it also, when they stop buying, right? When they hit their capacity, they hit their allocation, what does that do to supply and demand and values, right? Because values are up, and partially because the iBuyers are able to buy so quickly with all cash. So, it's a discussion we are always having, right? We don't know what's going to happen, but I think it's something to watch.
One of the things you and I talked about the other day was about new geos and really starting to think outside your own sandbox. And this is probably one of the most important topics for everybody here that's buying real estate on this call, is really thinking outside. My entire career, I've always held this rule that, invest and own in areas that I know very, very well. And so I was raised in California. So the vast majority of my real estate is in California, but I will tell you, with changing taxes, COVID, people now being able to work out of their homes and relocate, we're seeing, I'd say we have almost 400 employees. We're seeing a lot of our key people go inland. So if you think about the two bookends of New York and California, Kevin, we're seeing our people that reside here, big corporate office in California, they're going to Vegas, they're going to Arizona, they're going to Utah, they're going to Colorado. We're seeing everyone on the East Coast go to North Carolina, Nashville, South Carolina, Florida. So thoughts from your perspective on that kind of flow inward?
Oh, yeah. I call it the mass migration, right? I mean, it's very true, right? I mean, even me, born and raised in California, I was born in the Midwest, raised in California, refused to leave the state. Like when I was going to college, law school, I refused to leave. And I could have left, but I didn't. And I still to this day contemplate leaving. And a lot of my friends and colleagues have. And a lot of, this is a good way to look at it, right? I get more phone calls from new lenders in the state of Tennessee than ever before, right? We got more calls this past month about how do I start lending in Tennessee than I would say all of 2020, right? And the reason for this is they're not only searching for new opportunities, but they're also searching for a much more business friendly environment, right? And so, it's funny enough, Tennessee has some weird usury laws, but the idea is that as an investor, as a lender, looking for new opportunities doesn't mean you just start advertising in the state and you start just doing deals there without ever visiting the property, right? I mean, still boots on the ground, having a local presence, having visiting your properties, spending time in your properties. This is important, right? I don't recommend an iBuyer approach, because that's where you never know if you own a meth lab, right? And that it happens. These kind of things are important, but still, when you see a mass migration because of not only business friendliness, tax friendliness, but also values, right? A lot of people feel that they share more values with other people in the Sun Belts, or in the the small states, or outside of the Northeast and move down south. It's a value question. And then finally, I really do think that when it comes to the migration, it also has to do with jobs. Tesla just announced they're moving their headquarters to Austin, Texas. Oracle's already done it. Goldman's talking about moving to Texas. In our industry, I think Lending Home is moving to the East Coast, right? And so people are moving to more business-friendly states. They're moving their headquarters to more business-friendly states, and that takes people with them. And that's not just small companies, large companies. It's also small companies. And we have a lot of clients that have, they've been lending in California and in Arizona and in Texas, and they've chosen to, and they're headquartered in California, and they're starting to think about, moving their operations to Texas or Arizona. And
Yeah, I mean, you think about the California, we've had key executives, for every 100,000 they make, the state tax is 14%. So
right.
1,000 goes to the state, they go to a non-state tax, Vegas or one of the others that we're talking about, that's 14,000 per 100. And I think what really kind of compounds that is the dollar also stretches so much further. So Manhattan might get a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, very small little dwelling for $1 million, $3 million, $4 million. You have a 5-bedroom, 5-bath on a 1/4 acre in South Carolina with a beautiful tree and a pool.
Oh yeah,
same price.
And I can buy a ranch in Texas for what I pay for my house. I mean, it's crazy, and it's got a beautiful 5-bedroom house on it too. You cannot believe the values you're getting outside of the state of California, and that's part of the issue. Agreed. Also, though, I think about this is that nowadays, because we're all working, we've done the work from home for a year. It's so easy to do. You can work from your home office in Texas, and then fly into headquarters once a month. Not a big deal, right?
I think you bring up an important part, and really something for everyone here to know. This isn't just about all of you, but if you're investing in places, I'm telling you that the whole COVID here and gone, and everyone's going to rush back to a gigantic, big corporate office, and we're going to be shoulder to shoulder. That's done. No matter what you're seeing in the media or reading in the paper, that is done. Like, companies are rethinking the way that they get connected with their employees. We're doing it here. And I was paradigm shift. I totally believe shoulder to shoulder, everyone get the jersey on, we go, march together forward. I don't believe that anymore. Now you can get quality individuals working out of a room in their home in any state they want to live, tax friendly or not, stretch the dollar or not, closer to their family or not, like real mindful consideration of that. And that's going to change the way everyone thinks about real estate investing. Texas no longer is somewhere in the middle, and I got an investment out there and I hope it does good. It's like there is real opportunity in some of these states, and it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out, and plays out over the next 4 or 5 years. But lots of opportunity for people that can get out of their own.
Consider the population move, right? The population move to these cities is creating a new hub, right? And Austin is, always been a new kind of place to look at. But you look up and down, I think it's I-85 or something like that, New Braunfels and San Marcos and those parts of Texas, right in line with Austin, also are seeing a great benefit of this migration. And I think a lot of our investors need to think about, if you have these large corporate headquarters moving, that means a lot of their wealthy executives are also going to be moving there. They need to buy houses, they need to rent houses. It's going to stimulate the economy, meaning that the rental homes, multifamily, it's all going to be needed. And so I think it's That's the economic impetus to do it. But you're right on the whole shoulder to shoulder thing. It's no longer needed, and everyone's appreciating that. I think CBRE's put out a report on this issue on offices. It's no longer a priority, right? Office space is no longer a priority anymore. There's a reason for that.
So, hey, I'm looking at the time, Gina. We got 10 minutes. I want to make sure we get some questions answered and just open it up if you don't mind.
Yeah, let's jump in. Okay, so we have a recurring theme here when you guys were speaking about Zillow and whatnot, about big companies dominating the market. And so the questions are based around sourcing. So Bill, I'm going to toss this one to you. As far as investor funds go, where are the investors generally sourcing their funds to buy these fix and flips? And also, any tips as far as smaller outlets, individuals acquiring properties?
Yeah, so I'm going to put the IRA discussion aside because I thought Kevin did a really good job addressing that and how we're going to protect that. What we've seen, believe it or not, is people have tapped into the equity of owner-occupied homes that they've had and used those resources to reinvest into flips. And there's quite a number of new flippers coming into the space, like probably a larger percentage than we've seen in an awfully long time. They're also JVing with family members or friends, so pooling resources together. I see a lot of pockets of, I got a realtor, I got a general contractor, and I got a capital guy. And then the three of those go and figure out what the pref is and splits, and they go in and tackle it. One of a very good friend of mine who's in lending has been doing that and doing it very, very successfully. So, I mean, there's so many different ways to generate capital if you have a real opportunity. If you're having a hard time generating the capital, you've probably got to check the opportunity because people have their own ways of thumbing that and sound checking it. And if people aren't excited about what you're talking about, it's probably a pretty good indicator that you need to go back and revisit. And then, what Kevin was talking about with the IRAs, yeah, we have seen that. We see more of that in investing in funds than we've seen in actually using it to buy real estate. So I think when I thought about Reg D originally, Kevin, my first thought was, wow, all of those funds that are generated throughout the United States through IRA money, they're probably freaking out.
Oh yeah.
We don't.
But it also has to do with multifamily syndications, right? So if you're building a small multifamily project and you're raising money from 10 LPs, you're still using Reg D, right? We do that a lot here. We write small syndications, $5 million deals, and they're raising the money through LPs, and you need Reg D for that. Even on residential, we create these small portfolio vehicles for fix and flip, and they're doing it through LPs in the form of a fund, right? If it's small, right, $5-10 million. The IRA is a very powerful tool for that. One other thing is we found is the friends and we form funds here at Geraci on my side of the business, and the nice part has been the story we always hear, the consistent story. It's always been kind of like, I've got a friend or an uncle or a brother or a cousin or a mom, and we've been doing deals together for a little while, friends and family, and that's one of the best places you can look. But the deal has to pencil, right? You can't bring a bad deal to your friends and family. So,
good question. You're muted, Gina. $5.
Ooh, stinger. Okay, I got you. Any tax benefits for ground up construction for investors?
Any tax benefits?
Tax benefit.
Different.
So, we talked about the ozone.
Yeah, go ahead. You're mute. We're making a fortune here. Go ahead.
I think that's the biggest one lately. And you can use, you can do a 1031 as well, but I don't know any other programs that are tax efficient for that.
Yeah. Neither do I.
Okay. How does the new law regarding ADUs impact investors?
So, Kev, I'm going to let you tackle that. You and I talked a little bit. There was like 4 dozen legislative bills pushed by Newsom some time ago, and we were trying to peel through which ones made the most sense. I know that there was a couple in and around deregulating local governments and insisting on them going through that approval process quicker. You have any comments on that?
Yeah, I was looking through it, and a lot of it was your typical, I would say, tax kind of play and zoning play. But the one that stood out to me was interesting was they deregulated particularly duplex or single ADUs in a particular area, bypass the zoning programs. And then there's a program in different cities. I think LA has one where certain types of prefab ADUs are pre-approved, so you don't need to get permits for those.
Right.
And so those two things combined kind of really, what do you call it, shorten the ADU construction process. And so, everyone knows in California, getting a permit is like, it's like pulling teeth, and getting zoning or getting entitlements done in general is like pulling teeth, takes forever. So anything to reduce the process. And I think Newsom understood that. And this, I give credit to the California Association of Realtors. I know they really pushed him hard on this issue.
They did.
Was that, this is the easiest way to build density, right? We have a lot of old lots, big plots of land, small property on it. Why not build an ADU behind it? It easily increases density. It creates more housing. So it was a smart move. I rarely agree with Governor Newsom's approach on many things, but that was one thing I did agree with.
I second that. The entire statement. What else you got, Gina?
This is from Oliver. Are there any legal updates that are relevant to share for self-directed 401ks?
I'm not aware of any. Do you have any of those, Kevin?
No, I mean, so the funny thing about this Build Back Better Act, IRA prohibition, is that it was specifically, it's not codified yet. So it's basically just a summary, but it only talks about individual retirement accounts. It doesn't mention, self-directed or not. And I don't think they're aware of the self-directed industry. And so it doesn't talk about 401ks whatsoever. Now, when they take this to actually have it written out in the form of, statutory, codification, we'll see if they broaden the scope to, for example, plan assets or, benefit plans or something like that. I was concerned when I read it initially, like, is this going to reach beyond IRAs and to defined benefit 401k and KEOG, because those are also very popular and they're usually similarly used to invest in real estate. So we don't know yet, but we have to wait and see if it actually gets to the statutory stage, and if it does, we'll continue to fight it.
So next question for you, Kevin, is what is the best way to stay on top of legislative changes, specifically that impact business purpose loans, especially, when investors are doing properties in multiple counties and states?
Yeah, this is, every time we've been working on something like this, it's come to our attention from the form of a local operator, right? So before this advocacy push, we opposed licensing legislation in the state of Florida, and a local lender brought it to our attention, and we mobilized. And so I think what you really have to do is focus on your local community and see, and these things are typically posted. If you watch the what I would consider the local version of Congress, the state assembly, or whatever you want to call it, they have meetings and committee meetings on the issue, and they have to publicize what they're doing. Other things you can do is, after that exercise, we've taken the effort to kind of, you call it key citing all the local licensing legislation for lenders, and it's one of the biggest issues. And that gives us a little bit of extra, oversight on when it's going to pop up. But frankly, it's you have to be active at local level, get involved in your local government, state assembly or whatever, even the county level, and that'll allow you to find out what's going on at the local level, what's being proposed. Every time something comes up, it's typically a state law issue. This is the first time it's been a federal, and every time it's been a local operator who's very kind of in touch with the state assembly, giving us the heads up. So.
Okay, one more question. I'm going to squeeze in here. We have so many questions, by the way, so we're not going to get to everything, but this is for both of you, I would say, because it's regarding the strategy of investing in rental short-term versus long-term, and timing around that. Is now the good time? This was directed specifically for the Texas area, but I think everyone on this call can benefit from this. Just what is your take? Let's start with you, Bill, on the rental strategy right now, shifting from fix and flip to rental.
So without saying shifting, I'll just address the rental question. I think I'm very bullish on real estate. Supply, as I said earlier, is over 5 million homes under where it needs to be to meet the demand. I think the price points in some of these states that we've talked about in Vegas and Arizona, Colorado, Utah, parts of Florida, Texas, Nashville, Tennessee area, South and North Carolina are such that there's still an awful lot of opportunity for growth. Rates are at historic lows, both on conventional and on the institutional private money. I mean, we're doing rental loans 5, 7, and 10 in the 4s. Like in the 4s, you couldn't get non-owner occupied conventional pricing with full documentation in the 4s a short while ago. So the whole idea about being able to do that today, if you're in long-term real estate, I can't think of a better time to actually start accumulating real estate than now. And listen, if you have the documentation to qualify for a full doc, then conventional is going to be 75 to 100 basis points inside of what the business purpose loans are. So by all means, but if you're independent, self-employed, and taking advantage of all the tax laws and don't qualify with taxes the way that you would need to in conventional, then for sure you would want to take advantage of the business purpose loan space. And yeah, Gina, our biggest investors are pushing everything forward and in to buy as much real estate as they can in the states that we've talked about. Kevin, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's important to remember is that states like Texas, it's on everybody's radar, right? Texas, the Carolinas, Tennessee, parts of Florida, on everyone's radar from a real estate investing perspective. You really have to make sure that you're spending quality time in the locale with a very good operator who knows, a good, I would say, broker or realtor who can help you, or spend time there yourself. I don't think, the old ways of trying to hunt for off-market deals are really going to work anymore because of how popular these areas are. But there's still a lot of opportunity. We have a lot of lenders that only lend in these areas, and they tell us how busy it is over there, which means there's still plenty of opportunity to be had. And I think, the popularity of rental has everything to do with what Bill just talked about. It's all the stars are aligning, right? You have more opportunity to lend to it, ease of operation to get a loan as compared to what it was even 3 years ago. But on top of that, you also have significant increase in sophistication and how people are going about it. And I think that's a lot of credit to the private lenders because they're teaching their investors of how to approach a portfolio program as opposed to doing all these one-off conventional deals. And hey, why don't you do it this way? This can save you a little bit of money on the long run, and helping them kind of like leverage that and go on to do more deals. And that's important too, right? So you want to find on the financing side, what I've found is more people on the rental side have been kind of transitioning toward the private lender style of loan as opposed to the conventional style of loan. I think that has mostly to do with the different type of relationship you're going to have and the different type of kind of approach that private lenders are giving them. But, judging by how active these rental loans are for our clients, which are all private lenders, it tells you that there's so much opportunity to be had. And if you're not, jumping in head first right now, you got it. You have to do it. So
agreed.
So this is officially a wrap. Kevin,
yay.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Bill. Thank you both for the incredible discussion. If you want to set up a consultation with Kevin and his team, I got, a lot of very specific questions coming in. Reach out to him directly. You can contact him via email, k.kim@geracillp.com. That's k.kim@GERACILLP.com. And you can also call him directly at 949-379-2600. Previous Industry Insights recordings, don't miss out. There is a wealth of information, various different topics you can learn from. Visit civicfs.com/industry insights for that. And don't forget to find us on Apple or Spotify. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in today. And we will look forward to doing it again.
Be safe, everyone. Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate
Thanks,
you.
Bill.